In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today is Tuesday, October 18th, and welcome to the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. Before we get started today, I got to throw out a warning to everyone. We have a guy on our podcast tonight who's not very happy. He's a little sad. He's been a little down. We had a little pre-show meeting. He seems a little distracted, a little out of sorts. Steve, are you okay?
It's not me. Woo-hoo!
You know, I've had better days. I've had better days. I've had better fantasy days, better fantasy seasons, and things just keep snowballing right now. Snowballing downhill, and I'm not even mad. Just like you nailed it. I'm just sad. Just a little upset, a little depressed.
You seem very unhappy. I am Kevin Cotillo, by the way. The guy who is very sad is obviously Steve Marcus. We also have Sal with us. Hey, Sal, can you do something to cheer Steve up or what?
Hey, Steve, who loves to get tickled. Come here, buddy.
So
I do.
Earlier this week, we had to give Sal a hug, and now I think we got to send all the hugs to Steve.
Yeah, I could use a few, or I could use a vote at the Falafel House Twitter account.
Whoa.
We need some votes.
Hey.
That's right.
All right. Yeah, that would definitely help us out. If you go to Falafel House on Twitter, search Falafel House, you can find numerous tweets from us sending out a poll. That we're in a little bit of a competition right now. We are up for a show of the week through the Podern family. Family of podcasts, I guess is the best way to say that. Every week they do a 4-show pod of the week competition. We are currently tied for first place, I believe, at last check.
That's correct.
So hopefully we are still in that position. We need your vote. We really do. So if you're on Twitter, go to @Falafel House and check out the poll. Or you can find me as @Wally Central. You can also find me as @Wally Central on the Fantasy Life app. You can find Steve as @SidSkeet on both Twitter and the Fantasy Life app. You can vote on the poll through either one of those accounts as well. And because he likes to be different, as we always say, Sal is either @LitoSal on Twitter or @Sal33 on the Fantasy Life app. And speaking of the app, guys, we are doing a Fantasy Life app mailbag tonight. Are you excited?
Mailbag!
Steve, if
These are some of our favorite shows.
It is. Steve, if that doesn't cheer you up, I really don't know what to tell you. I think the only thing besides that would cheer you up is a running back, really.
Yes, absolutely. That would do the trick. That would really do it.
So for those of you listening who may not know, if you've stumbled upon this podcast through some other means, the Fantasy Life app is obviously a social media web application that you can download to discuss all forms of fantasy sports. Right now, it's obviously a huge fantasy football program. There is lots of questions to be answered, memes. You can post polls. You can go into the chats, like the Falafel House chat. You can ask questions to all of us and others who are there willing to help you 24/7. It's a great app. You should go to your app store or your Google Play store and download that because it will certainly help you throughout your fantasy football season. As evident of that, we're going to answer a whole lot of questions from actual users from the app. We posted a poll or a shout today asking for your questions, your most daunting questions, and we'll get to as many of those as we can tonight. I don't know. How many responses did we get, Sal?
Well, I think on the overall post there was 80 plus interactions. Some of those were multiple people. Some guys actually went in there and started to answer the questions from the app, but I was like, okay, should we kick them out? But I would say we got in the neighborhood of 50 questions on the app today.
I would say you are probably correct. So we will get to those very quickly. Let's go through some quick news. The first one, this is really not to press you further, Steve, but Eddie Lacy is expected to miss several weeks.
Oh, no.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Apparently,
No big deal.
He apparently has a little bit more than just a sprained ankle. They're not saying how many weeks. They're not really saying exactly how bad it is, but it said several weeks was the report I read. Add on top of that James Starks is also set to miss about 4 weeks after surgery on his knee to repair a meniscus. And the Packers traded for Niall Davis, so it does not look good for Eddie Lacy. They also promoted a practice squad guy. Their running back situation is a bit of a mess right now, as is Steve's. So, Steve, your thoughts?
It sucks. It sucks real bad.
Hashtag analysis.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Eddie Lacy has not been the running back that we've all expected him to be. Eddie hasn't had a rushing touchdown yet, but he has still been a pretty solid running back too, low-end running back too. But having him go out for a few weeks is definitely something that you have to plan for. It looks like the guy that for this week, at least on Thursday, that's going to get some run is going to be Ty Montgomery, normally a wide receiver for them. He did get a few runs out of the backfield on Sunday. But I think for this week, until Niall Davis gets into the offense more, you're going to want to try to avoid this situation altogether and just hope that Eddie Lacy only has to miss this one, gets the extra time off leading into the next game, and then kind of go from there. But if I'm adding somebody that you have to start for this week, it's going to be Ty Montgomery, although he's probably not going to have that running back designation. If it's going to be 3 or 4 more weeks for Eddie Lacy, then Niall Davis is definitely someone you're going to want to look into.
Yeah, not only will he not have the running back designation, but some of you may be far enough down in the waiver position that you may not be able to get him, Steve.
Yeah, I would also fall into that category. So I'm hitting on all cylinders tonight.
Yep. All right, so let's move along quickly then. Vincent Jackson is headed to the IR with what could be an ACL tear. I believe this doesn't really affect too many teams. I mean, in deeper leagues, you may be starting Vincent Jackson, but I'm guessing in normal 12 teams leagues, no one's really starting him at this point. But it is worth noting that you can cut him, and Adam Humphries, I guess, is the guy that you want to pick up. He'll move into the number 2 role. He's been the slot receiver for most of the year. He's been serviceable, so a guy you could take a flyer on if you do have decent waiver position and need a wide receiver, someone to keep on your list. Sal, any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just agree with you. Vincent Jackson was averaging 6.5 points a game, and I think I'm looking at that in standard, so maybe just a few more in a PPR scenario. If you were starting him, like Kevin said, you now get the joy of cutting him because he wasn't doing anything for you anyway.
Yep. All right, Eric Decker, this is only news for those of you in keeper leagues. It might not be ready for the start of the 2017 season. He has, obviously we know about the shoulder injury, but he just had surgery for his hip, and apparently you can't have shoulder surgery while you're on crutches, so he has to delay the shoulder surgery. Just a mess overall. I mean, I think he's going to be fine, but if you are in a keeper situation, something you might want to monitor, depending on what your keeper value is and how much you have to spend to keep him, just something to keep in mind. Obviously, we'll continue to monitor this, probably not until the offseason, but we will. Let's talk about some of the PUP list players. For those of you who don't know, the physically unable to perform players, which were designated at the beginning of the season, are now eligible to start practicing in Week 7 after their 6 weeks off. Right now, the 2 big names that I'm looking at are Dion Lewis and Ladarius Green. Neither are practicing yet, so you're going to keep monitoring these situations. But Sal, any thoughts on either of those guys?
Yeah, I mentioned on our last show that with the way that James White has performed and seeing that the Patriots have actually said or it's come out that they're going to probably go slow with Dion Lewis, a lot of questions have come out. Should I add him? Is now the time? I don't know that I'm running out to add him. If you have the space and you're desperate for a running back, i.e. Steve, and he's
Oh,
available.
who, me?
Who? What? Huh?
Me?
Then you're gonna want to add him because when he did play last year, he was really really good. But he's a guy with an injury history, and I'm not so sure he comes back and is very fantasy relevant. The interesting guy here is Ladarius Green, and the interesting part is that we all know, if you listen to this podcast, that Steve and Kevin really really were high on him, and if he was healthy and he played, he probably would be a top 12 tight end, a relevant tight end in fantasy right now. And the good news is I went right out and grabbed him off the waiver wire, actually off the free agent wire in Falafel, because if he does come back and I get to use him as my tight end and he's successful, I get to laugh last.
It's not very nice.
You're just throwing salt right into Steve's wounds, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm having a rough night here, and you're not making it any better, Sal.
Yeah.
He's available. You have any running backs? Oh, forget it.
Oh, wow. All right. So any other guys that you guys know of that are on the pup list that we might want to consider, or did we nail both of them?
You definitely got the biggest ones.
All right. So let's move on. Chuck Pagano says that Dante Moncrief is getting closer, Steve, but he's still no time frame. So while that might help you at some point with your wide receivers, he's still not going to play running back either. So, and we don't know exactly how long he's going to be out, but definitely monitor. If that's a guy that was dropped in your league, he's definitely, in my opinion, worth an add right now. We get a lot of questions about that lately, whether or not you should add him. If you have the roster spot, if you can dump a guy like a Vincent Jackson, I would absolutely add Moncrief now while you can.
I dumped Philip Dorsett for him last week. He became available in the league, and I had a decent waiver claim, and I made sure I grabbed him right away.
Nice work. All right, so Ben Roethlisberger has his knee surgery. Could return after the Week 8 bye. Until then, as we talked about earlier this week, it's the Landry Jones show. I don't even know what else to say. You're increasing your value, I guess, maybe for Le'Veon Bell, and beyond that, everyone else gets a little bit of a decrease. So, all right, that's it for the news, guys. Let's get straight into the Fantasy Life app mailbag because we have, as we mentioned, a large amount of questions. Thank you to everyone who participated in this, who stepped up to ask us some questions. We're going to try and do a lot of them rapid fire, so, basically to limit the amount of analysis that Steve has to do, because clearly it's not in his wheelhouse tonight, but we will.
That is false, but it would all just be depressing.
Right.
All
right, so here we go. Let's. You guys ready to go?
Ready to roll.
Awesome.
Do it.
All right. I don't know how to say this first one. Anyone have any thoughts? At Quadir Shakur.
Okay,
that's pretty close.
That's what I'm going to go with. Should he sell high on Brandon Cooks, Steve? You're a Cooks owner, so let's go with you there.
I'm going to say no. I would not sell high on Brandon Cooks. I think you have to have the lowered expectations whenever they do leave New Orleans, such as this week when they're going to play Kansas City. But he's someone who had an early bye week, so you've got him for the rest of the season. And you know that they are going to have those home games. You saw his potential this last week. They get to face Tampa Bay twice in the fantasy playoffs. I am not selling high on Brandon Cooks, just knowing that there are going to be those games where he seems to vanish, but know that he's got the really high ceiling.
Yeah, I wouldn't sell either because I don't think you're going to get value anyway, to be honest with you. The big game helps, but I think everyone knows what he is at this point. All right, so we got some Hunter Henry questions, Sal. At Chris Rowe 9599 wants to know, he has Delaney Walker and Gary Barnidge. He wants to know if he should drop Barnidge for Hunter Henry in half-point PPR.
Yeah, so he has the comfortability of having Delaney Walker, even with the bad week last week. He's a clear-cut tight end one. So Hunter Henry happens to be outscoring him on a weekly basis. Hunter Henry is averaging 13.7 points a game. That's good for fourth overall in a PPR scenario. Absolutely, I'm fine with dropping Barnidge and adding Henry to your lineup. He appeared to really bury Antonio Gates last week. Gates was on the first drive, got 3 targets, caught 2 of them, and then it was the Hunter Henry show the rest of the way. He's younger, he's quicker, he just looks better at this point, and I don't think San Diego can keep him off the field. So I give you 100% go ahead on that.
All right, so at CH Italian 2AZ 339865, that's really the name. Wanted to know about Delaney Walker versus Hunter Henry for the rest of the season. You touched on it a little bit. I'll take this one because I think I would actually go with Hunter Henry, to be quite honest with you. I think he's going to be heavily involved in that passing game the rest of the season. I think that Delaney Walker, while I like what Delaney Walker has done, and obviously he's a true threat there, with the limited weapons that they have in Tennessee. I think that Henry's exactly what Phillip Rivers needs there, and with the smattering of terrible wide receiver, or not terrible, I guess, average wide receivers that they have there, I think he's going to be continue to be utilized. The only issue that I have with Henry is the red zone, because I think you're still going to see Antonio Gates there, but I think I would take Hunter Henry over Delaney Walker the rest of the season. All right. We move along here, Sal. I know that you think that this question was directed to you and you only, but he actually did ask all of us. So I'm going to go with Steve at Mark W, who, by the way, is one of the creators of the app. Wants to know who's worth a better gamble this week, Ty Montgomery or Brashard Perryman.
So like we talked about in the open with Lacey going down, Montgomery is going to be getting some play at running back this week. I'm still actually going to go with Brashard Perryman here. Going up against the New York Jets and their terrible secondary, you know that Flacco likes to throw the ball down the field. I think that this will be a matchup that will be exploited. Still don't know if Steve Smith's going to be playing this week, so I think that Perriman would be he's got the biggest breakout potential of the two guys this week.
Mark W. At Sal33, who is worth a better gamble this week, Montgomery or Perriman? Oh, that must have mean everybody. Okay.
Who did you answer?
Yeah, well, go ahead and give your answer then, since it's
all about
that's
you. Not going to happen now. That's not going to happen now. Well, no chance of that happening.
That makes perfect sense. Then you can answer this question that was submitted by at Logan Bragg 6752. He wants to know if he should pick up Eifert and drop Ertz. Ertz was your boy coming into the season, so I'm curious what your thoughts are here.
Yeah, I mean, Ertz has been massively disappointing. So I can't obviously ask Logan if he has another tight end on his roster currently, because I don't know that I'm ready to just put Eifert out there this week if he does come back. It is a pretty good matchup. They're playing Cleveland, but still, nothing's come out that he's been cleared, that he's going to be playing. So I'll say this, Logan, if you have a serviceable tight end that could play this week, I'm going to take the risk on Tyler Eifert the rest of the season over Zach Ertz, because I've seen the Philadelphia offense start to slow down. Carson Wentz slow down. They're playing Minnesota this week. So rest of season, as long as Eifert is cleared and healthy, I will go with Tyler Eifert.
Yeah, really quickly, I would say that on Eifert, depending on the league size and your bench size and all of that, there may be another guy that's worth dropping to pick up Eifert and carry two tight ends for a couple of weeks while you see what happens. So I would consider doing that as well. A couple of Jordan Howard questions for you here, Steve. At LOGIB, I'm going to go with Logib.
No, that was a good try.
All right. How would you say it?
I don't know. I just said that was a good try.
All right, Logib. At Logib wants to know, is Jordan Howard a workhorse for the rest of the season, or should he sell high?
I am not selling high on Jordan Howard either. I know that his snaps got cut into a little bit by Kadeem Carey last week, and that'll probably happen a little bit going forward, because when Jordan Howard just started out, he was the only guy there. So you'd assume that they would try to lighten his load a little bit. But I think he's been explosive enough to be very, very productive with the opportunity that he is given. I don't think that Jeremy Langford is going to be an issue for him when he does come back. He's still not practicing. I think that Jordan Howard has done enough to keep that starting job for the rest of the year. So I'm not selling high on Jordan Howard unless I'm getting a lot in return as his current value, which is a low-end running back 1, high-end running back 2.
All right, so at Matt Massman 2560 wanted to know about his upcoming schedule and whether or not you think that that's a reason to move him. You didn't touch on that portion, so give me a little thoughts about his schedule.
So yeah, he has kind of a light schedule the last couple of weeks. He was going against Indianapolis, and then this last week is actually going against Jacksonville. They do have a tough defensive front. Now they do face Green Bay and Minnesota the next 2 weeks, and then they've got a bye following that. So you have to have some lowered expectations for that. But following that bye week, they go back to Tampa Bay. They have the New York Giants, and Tennessee, San Francisco. So I'm liking that their schedule does that. Like I said, he's going to get a lot of volume. And so for that reason alone, I'm not going to be selling on him. I'm going to be holding tight, riding it through these next 2 weeks, knowing that his schedule lightens up once he comes off the bye.
All right, so at Sully330, that goes for you. Don't be selling Jordan Howard. And at Chris6484, Steve, if you were going to sell Howard, which you've clearly said you're not, and you needed a QB or a tight end, who would you look to target? What kind of value would you be able to get there?
I'm thinking that you could probably aim for maybe a lower end quarterback one if you're trying to get that type of guy. You could possibly try to get a Matthew Stafford. That might be a little bit on the high end, but it just is going to be depending on who are the biggest needs for the teams that you're trying to go for. I think you could maybe try for a Phillip Rivers. There's definitely someone that you might be able to go for. And Andy Dalton is also someone he's a top quarterback right now. And I think that would be very doable. You might almost be giving too much for that. So I think Phillip Rivers would probably be right around where I'd go.
Yeah, one guy I might target and see if maybe I could get another piece thrown in if you wanted to was Eli Manning. Obviously hasn't performed from a points perspective yet, but I do think he will turn it around more. Needs to get in the end zone more this year, and I think those touchdowns are going to start coming. So he's a guy I might target and then see if you can get another piece thrown in too. Maybe you can get a tight end as well. All right, that'll do it for the majority of the Jordan Howard portion of the evening. Let's move along to at Gillian Nick or at Gillio Nick. Drop Will Fuller for Stephon Diggs for Cameron Meredith. Sal, I know you're big on Meredith.
Yeah, so I've been pretty outspoken too in the past about Will Fuller. After his first few weeks, I thought he looked every bit the part of a good fantasy wide receiver too. He's been slowed down by injuries lately, and having Osweiler as his quarterback, the passing game has not been great there, and you cannot deny the targets that Meredith is seeing is just ridiculous. I mean, he came in for part of a game against Detroit and saw 5 targets that he caught 4 of in that game. In his first start, 12 targets, 9 receptions, 130 yards, and a touchdown. And this past week, 15 targets, 11 receptions, 113 yards. I will tell you right now, I like Cameron Meredith better than both of them the rest of the season. I know it's a short sample size, but it's enough for me. It just seems correct. Like this guy's going to flourish this year. So I would drop either one of those guys, but probably Fuller first before Diggs and pick up Meredith.
All right. So at Jimmy Muller 3122 wants to know if you would trade Cameron Meredith for Spencer Ware. These are both your guys. So I'm curious. And for me, neither of these guys has a big name. So I don't know why you even cared. Drop them both and pick up someone with a big name.
Hashtag big name bigots.
All right, so answer his question, though, Sal. Cameron Meredith for Spencer Ware, what would you do there?
Yeah, so, Jimmy, unfortunately, I don't know your roster construction, and to me this would be a roster construction question. But I'm going to lean more Meredith, and that's because you do have the possibility of Jamal Charles, while I don't believe it, you do have that possibility that a Hall of Fame running back. Hot sprinkles. That a Hall of Fame running back, a guy who's been a fantasy darling for years, does ease back and take control of that job. Where with the wide receivers, you have more opportunity for it to be spread out. So I will say going forward, rest of season, I could see Cameron Meredith as a wide receiver too, and Spencer Ware as a flex. So that would say for me, I'd lean towards Meredith. So if you need a wide receiver, I would definitely make that trade.
All right, I'm going to handle the next one here. At Tazist wants to know, is Shady McCoy now a top 5 fantasy option? And I will answer this with an absolute yes. There's no question in my mind that he is a top 5 fantasy option at this point. He's number 6 overall in fantasy scoring in Falafel, and that's including quarterbacks. So and in that top 6, there are 4 quarterbacks and David Johnson and LaShawn McCoy. So, and he is less 0.3 points away from being in the top 5. He's definitely a top 5. You got to get him. Obviously you're starting him, but if you can make a move to get him, he's a guy that I would make a move for all day long. He is definitely a top 5 option. All right, at Trek Mac D7828. Steve, he wants to know if he should trade Terrence West for Stephon Diggs in a 10-team standard league, also referred to as homeless.
Yes, homeless scoring. I would not be trading Terrence West in a 10-team standard league just because we've seen that Stephon Diggs can disappear from time to time. And in a standard league, definitely put a little more emphasis on running backs, and Terrence West seems to have that job kind of locked up at the moment. So I know Kenneth Dixon came back from injury a couple weeks ago. There was a lot of hype on that, but it really hasn't seemed to come to fruition. So I would be holding on to Terrence West and riding that until the wheels fall off there. He's been very solid. He had a good week last week against the Giants. And so I definitely would be holding on to Terrence West and staying away from Diggs, especially in standard.
All right, so follow-up question for me to you on that, Steve, is are you just so running back needy on your own team that you are now just going to pick every running back over any wide receiver?
It's very possible. I try not to have my analysis skewed by my own troubles, but no, I think I would make this move regardless of my woes.
I'm just wondering if it's like a protein deficiency, where like people who are protein deficient go eat a ton of meat. Is it you're just going to pick running backs everywhere?
That could be. My mouth starts watering whenever I start looking at these names.
That's right. All right. At Ichiro Barnes 3487, Sal wants to know if Arian Foster and C.J. Anderson for Julio Jones is a decent enough offer. And if not, what about C.J. Anderson and Mike Evans for Julio? I think you're probably going to say the second one's a little better, but let's hear your thoughts.
Well, what I'm going to say is the first one's not good enough. The second one is way too good. So, I mean, Arian Foster he's an afterthought in fantasy football right now. I mean, if there's anybody out there who's buying him on name, then they're very foolish, and they don't play fantasy football to win, and they don't pay attention. So
obviously, we've talked about Steve's troubles with running backs. I offered him Arian Foster, and he said no. So that'll give you an idea.
Yeah. I mean, he scoffed at that. So, yeah, if I'm a Julio owner, I probably click decline and don't even respond to you because you insulted me with that trade. Going on to the other side, so you have C.J. Anderson, again, included in this trade. So, to me, C.J. Anderson right now is a top 10 to 12, so like 10 to 12 running back right now in fantasy football. And a few weeks back, everybody had anointed him as a top 2 to 3 for the rest of the season. It's amazing how things change so quickly. And then you have Mike Evans, who Steve is also very high on, as well as I am. And in his bye week this week, and looking over all the wide receivers, it's my conclusion that I rank Mike Evans right now as the number 5 most trustworthy fantasy wide receiver on a weekly basis. And that's behind, of course, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., Julio Jones, and A.J. Green. So he's only, in my opinion, 2 or maybe 3 spots behind Julio Jones. He's out-targeted him by 10 while playing one less game. So he's seeing a lot more attention from his quarterback. So to me, there's no way I would give that up for Julio in that trade. So, yeah, you're going to have to find a happy medium somewhere in between if you really want to get Julio on your roster. But for now, if you have Mike Evans, I'd be comfortable keeping him.
All right. At Caleb Ellington V8M2S, Steve wants to know Eddie Lacy for C.J. Anderson. Is this a good deal?
Hell yeah. If you're getting C.J. Anderson, you make that trade right now. You make it, and then you run. And then when he tries to say he swindled you, he said, "Hey, pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on in the world around you."
That is correct. At Nick.Fawcett wants to know Doug Martin for Jay Ajayi or Jordan Howard for Jay Ajayi, Steve. So what are you doing with Jay Ajayi right now, really? Where's his value at?
Jay Ajayi is actually someone in my troubles tonight I've been trying to acquire. But no, I would not be trading Doug Martin or Jordan Howard to acquire Jay Ajayi. I have both of those guys ranked fairly higher than Jay Ajayi for the rest of the season. Although if he's asking for the other side, if someone's offering those guys up for JJA, then I would definitely accept. But I would not be giving away Doug Martin or Jordan Howard for the likes of JJA.
All right, at Junior Fantasy Champ B2B. Steve, he seems like he's in your problem, your situation here. He's lost 4 straight and needs some serious help. So who does he target for Nuke? He's going to trade Nuke. Who should he be looking to get? Obviously, no details on roster construction here, but what kind of names might you float Nuke out there for?
Yeah, it would definitely depend on what you would be trying to get back in return. You said he's similar to me. He lost 4 straight. I wish I could say that, but I've actually lost 5 straight. So, yeah, trading Nuke is something that I would not do, just mostly because his value just isn't where it should be. He is much better than what he is currently ranked as, and he's going to have another tough game coming up this week against Denver. So you're not going to be able to get the type of value that you normally should. But if you're dead set on, trading him, I would look to be splitting him. Try to get 2 players back, maybe an Emmanuel Sanders and a running back or someone like that. If you can get someone to maybe trade a Jordy Nelson for him straight up, that I would consider something like that. But overall, I wouldn't do it. I would try to hold on to him and just know that he's going to have, once he gets past his Denver game, the schedule lightens up quite a bit and things are going to be better days ahead for DeAndre Hopkins.
All right, at Butt Blasted. Does Forte hold any value after this week, and what kind of return is a fair asking price, Sal?
Yeah, I don't know who's going to – maybe you could catch somebody sleeping on this one. But after the first 2 weeks of the fantasy season where Matt Forte looked to be back to his old self from maybe 2 to 3 years ago, he has fallen off steeply. I mean, he had the third game of the season, 15 attempts for 65 yards, which was okay. He averaged 4.3 yards a carry, but he had 14 carries for 27 against a tough Seattle team. But he only got targeted 3 times, 2 catches, where he usually makes a living at catching the ball into the backfield. He's got 12 for 53 against Pittsburgh, no touchdowns, and he had 9 for 19 last night, 1 reception for 3 yards. He has not scored a touchdown in 4 straight weeks. His carries have declined. Bilal Powell's inclusion in the offense has gone up. This is not a good time to own Matt Forte because you're going to have trouble starting him anywhere other than a flex, and you're really going to have trouble moving him. If you're going to move him, I would say you're going to try to get an RB2. If you're desperate, you're going to try to get an RB2 or an RB3 with upside, somebody that could maybe take a job or jump up. If you could get a Terrence West for him at this point, I know that seems crazy, but I just don't think that he gets full reign of this job back at any time. I just think his value right now is an RB3.
Yeah, what you want to do with Forte is try to find a guy like Steve or a person like Steve with a team that's just an absolute mess, who's down on his luck and who's depressed, and try and dangle Forte out there and see if you can get a ransom.
I would say in my defense of Matt Forte, we all know that I'm a lover of Matt Forte. He has gone through a pretty brutal stretch of games in terms of run defenses that he's faced. He's gone against Kansas City, Seattle, Pittsburgh, and now Arizona. So after this Baltimore game, which is another pretty tough matchup, he faces Cleveland, Miami, LA, New England, Indianapolis, San Francisco, and Miami. So it definitely.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Finish your point. No, Kansas City's not that good of a run defense this year, but forget about even that, Steve. The Jets are terrible. They're terrible.
Absolutely.
The offense is a mess. I don't think they have any identity. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, I was joking around last night saying we want Geno, and somehow the guy got in the game. If they make that change to him, or if they go to a Petty or somebody, that team has a chance of losing every game the rest of the season. And I don't know that Matt Forte stays fantasy relevant. So, if you want to buy low on him, if you got other guys and take a shot, that would be the only thing I would consider. But man, it is so pitiful for the New York Jets right now.
All right, a couple of who would you rather have for the rest of the seasons here? At OBJ wants to know Ezekiel Elliott or David Johnson. Steve, Which one of these guys would save your fantasy season?
Oh boy, what I would do for either one of these guys right now. But
Whoa.
I would take David Johnson. You saw him on the Monday night game. He just looked absolutely amazing. The guy is a legit running back. Not saying Ezekiel Elliott is not, but I would be taking David Johnson. And I mean, you can't go wrong. Ezekiel Elliott's been great, but what DJ's done, how he's looked so far, has just been incredibly impressive.
Yeah, as I mentioned in scoring, falafel scoring, David Johnson second overall in points, and that includes quarterbacks. So he's only behind Matt Ryan, which is incredible for a running back. So he's definitely the guy that I would take as well. All right, Sal, at Rams fan 0606 wants to know Dez or Allen Robinson for the rest of the season in standard scoring.
In standard scoring. So, I mean, Des Bryant comes back, and one of the statements I made before the season was that he's got, in my opinion, the highest touchdown upside of any elite wide receiver. But the issue comes into play here that I'm just not comfortable with his injuries and the way he's gotten injured the last two seasons. It's a fracture or a crack in the knee, and supposedly it's not going to get worse, but I'm not comfortable with that. So based on the injury possibilities, I'm going to go with Allen Robinson. I mean, Allen Robinson's overall numbers don't look that bad for this year. He has had fantasy games of 13 points, 24 points, and 16 points. He's still seeing a big chunk of targets. He's had 10, 11, and 15 in games this year. He has 3 touchdowns in 5 games. 2 of those were in one game, so it's a little misleading. But for me, for a comfortability level, and for me thinking that the Jaguars will continue to pass heavily because they are just not good, and Ezekiel Elliott will probably balance out Dallas more, I'm going to lean Allen Robinson.
All right, we roll along. At Hanselhoff wants to know if Allen Robinson, Sal, we'll pick it up with you since you're on the Allen Robinson thought process, I guess. He has Allen Robinson and Jerick McKinnon for Nuke Hopkins and Tevin Coleman. Which side do you like?
Yeah, I like the Hopkins Coleman side, and I'll say that Hopkins A-Rob pretty close, probably lean more A-Rob, but Tevin Coleman over Jerick McKinnon, hands down, not even close for me. So I think Coleman actually carries that trade for me, and I would prefer that side.
Absolutely. At Mellahus wants to know, Sal, if Hogan is worth stashing. I know he's another one of the guys that you've been kind of paying attention to for a while now.
Yeah, he's definitely worth a stash, but again, this depends on league size. So I would say in a 12-team plus, he's worth a stash. He only did get 1 target this past week, which he did catch. It was a 39-yard reception. So he's their downfield threat, believe it or not. He really is. And he played the second most snaps as a wide receiver behind Julian Edelman. So he's the wide receiver 2 on this team. And I want to own at least up to the wide receiver 2 in a New England offense. So he's definitely worth a stash, not a guy I'm getting into my lineup on a weekly basis, more a bye-week fill right now. But absolutely, if you have the room for him, get him.
Yeah, I will say this. The Patriots are a little backwards when it comes to their downfield threats because they use them when they have leads, which is interesting. Most teams that are playing from behind will try take a deep shot to try and catch up, score some points quickly. But the Patriots really do it more when they're in the lead. Because their short stuff, their intermediate throws are actually more. They feel more comfortable with them. They move the ball better with them, and they move the ball quicker in that up-tempo offense. So I think you see it, and with them playing from ahead a lot. That's why you didn't see him, with only the 1 catch. I think they didn't want to take those shots because they were just moving the ball, through the air in short passes. Obviously, James White had a good game, so just something to be keep in mind when you're talking about Hogan. Thank you for letting me get my Patriots thought of the night out there. At Caldy wants to know players outside of their position top 15 right now who may creep into the top 15 by the end of the year. Steve, any of these jump to mind for you?
Yeah, I'll just say this first one's going to be pretty surprising. It's going to be Todd Gurley, currently at running back 17. I'm pretty sure he's going to end in the top 15. They got Jordan Howard, running back 22 right now. I do think he will be a top 15 running back by the end of the year. And my long shot for right now, I'll say James White, currently running back 27. I think he's got a pretty good shot of ending jumping into that top 15. As far as running back or wide receivers, pardon me. I think I'm just gonna sound crazy, and you're all gonna say it's just because I own him, blah 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 blah. But I think Alshon Jeffrey's still got a chance to get up into that top 15 area. He is currently a wide receiver 26 without scoring a touchdown at all this year. So he's not getting a ton of looks in the red zone, but he is getting some yardage totals that are keeping him pretty relevant. And just the last one real quick, I'll say for a running back, we will I'll say Jameis Winston. He's currently running back or quarterback 17. I think he's got a great chance of ending up in the top 15, probably closer to top 10.
Sal, any other guys that he didn't touch on that you think might creep up?
There's some big name guys outside of the top 15 of wide receivers. Demaryius Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Marshall. These guys are all outside of the top 15 for weekly point totals. I think every one of those guys has the opportunity. And the long shot guy who is averaging the 18th most wide receiver points a week in a short period of time is Cameron Meredith. So I think it might be interesting to see if he could jump into the top 15.
All right, and let's continue along here at Eichhoff 12. Steve wants to know if he should drop Carson Palmer for Dalton. He also has Tyrod Taylor.
Well, me personally, I would probably drop Tyrod Taylor for Andy Dalton and keep those guys. But I know Tyrod Taylor's been playing pretty well lately. The Bills as a whole have been playing well. Carson Palmer did not look very good last night. I believe he only scored around 12 fantasy points in a blowout win. Not what you'd expect, although David Johnson kind of stole the show there. I think I would hold on to Carson Palmer. I really do. I think if I was going to drop one of those guys for Andy Dalton, it would be Tyrod Taylor, but I think I'd roll with the two that you got.
Agreed there. Let's see. Let's move along here. Where are we at? All right. NYC Geek Dad. Sal, is this you?
I think I know that guy.
He wants to know if Russell Wilson is a buy low. He offered Snead and Gore. He also has Palmer, OBJ, Jordy Pryor, Lacey, C. Mike, and James White on his roster. So is he buying low on Russell Wilson?
Yeah, I'd buy low on Russell Wilson personally, but I don't know that he's offering that low of an offer. I think it's a pretty good offer. I'm high on Snead, obviously, but he's I think getting the bye. He's got a bye week. He had the bye week already, right? Yeah, he had the bye week. He had a little bit more time to rest up. I think that he's just getting healthy. And to bring up Matthew Berry, I think Matthew Berry brought up a really good point that the other day the Kobe Fleener touchdown was a pass that was intended for Willie Snead, and Kobe Fleener just kind of came out of nowhere and took it to the house. That would have been a Willie Snead touchdown, a big Willie Snead touchdown. And I think people's entire opinion of him changes if that happens. So it's small things like that you may miss in a game that will change your thinking on someone because you don't see the actual play. So Willie Snead and Gore, who's the top 15 running back right now, so a running back 2, I think that's too much for Russell Wilson. But if you could get Russell Wilson for a buy low offer, I'm buying in on him. I still think that he is a top 6 to 7 quarterback rest of the season. I do believe that Seattle offense will get better. Doug Baldwin will get better. Jimmy Graham has looked phenomenal like his old self. So, yes, I say buy low on him. But I don't think that you're in that good a shape right now to be trading certain guys because of Eddie Lacy's new knowledge and injury. So I'm sure when you posted this earlier today in the chat, you did not know that there was a chance that Lacy would be out for several weeks. So I would reconsider that offer before you make it.
Yeah, and look, he has Carson Palmer on his roster, which I know he hasn't played well, but Palmer still has the ability to turn it around and be a serviceable quarterback. So for me, I'd rather keep the depth that you have in the other positions. But all right, at Show Me Your TD 7 wants to know trade Christian Michael and Sterling Shepard for Marvin Jones. I bet I know the answer to this from you, Steve, but let's hear it. He's a 12-team PPR, by the way.
Being a 12-team PPR, and not just because it's Sterling Shepard, I don't think that I would do this because you're losing running back and you're losing the wide receiver. You're getting Marvin Jones, who is better than Sterling Shepard. Obviously, I'm not going to argue that. I think Sterling Shepard has had a few bad weeks that has really hurt his value because he was a really hot name heading into week 4 before they faced the Vikings. But Christian Michael has been really good, and he has, I think, thrown his name into the hat to, deserve some touches whenever Thomas Rawls does come back. And right now, we don't know when that's going to be. So unless you were just absolutely stacked at depth and you can afford to get rid of both of these guys and have it not hurt you, I would say no, hold on to the 2 guys. But if you can afford to do it, then yeah, Marvin Jones, I don't think you're giving up too much. I would just prefer the depth.
All right. At Santa Cruz 1989 wants to know if Aaron Rodgers is going to turn it around. And he also wants to know if he should drop Forte to pick up Gio Bernard. Sal, what do you think about Rodgers and the Forte for Gio pickup?
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, I'm a big fan of Aaron Rodgers, and I had him last year in Falafel, and I thought she'd help me cruise to a victory. And, yeah, he was really essentially like having a low-end QB1 to QB2. His numbers were just not that good. And he just has not looked crisp. I said a few weeks back, after he had the 4-touchdown game, that I would look to trade him on high value because his yardage was still not that good in that game, and the offense just doesn't look good. With that said, this is Green Bay. They have so many weapons. I got to think it gets better. Do I think he finishes the season as a top 5 quarterback, which everybody had him projected to be? No, I don't. So if you can get a good quarterback, if you could get a combo of, like, say, Matt Ryan and someone else thrown in, maybe even, I'd consider that. But, does it get a little bit better? Yes, a little bit, but not a whole lot. As far as Forte goes, yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier. I see Gio Bernard as a RB3 to flex. So I'm going to say for now, I'll hold on to Forte. Based on his history, based on the fact that he is a better NFL football player than Giovanni Bernard. In that case, I'll hold on to I'll hold on to Forte and see how it plays out in the next coming weeks.
See, I would actually disagree with you just a little bit on that. I mean, it's close between Forte and Gio in my mind, but I would probably go with Gio because I think Cincinnati's in a bad spot, but they're still a decent team. They're going to need to throw a bunch. They're going to need to pick up some wins, and I just think he's running better than Jeremy Hill, and I think he's going to get a lot more touches as the season goes on because he's just looked better overall.
I think this will be a big telltale sign this week, Kevin.
Yep.
Going into Cleveland, do they really try to force Jeremy Hill to see what they have going on there? So I think this week will absolutely tell a lot rest of season.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, at Mike Montembeau wants to know I guess the offer is Mark Ingram, Terrence West, and Jordan Matthews for Gurley, Stephon Diggs, and Julian Edelman in a half-point PPR. Is this a good deal, Steve?
Call me crazy, but I'm going to want the Ingram, West, and Jordan Matthews side on this one. Mark Ingram, as opposed to Todd Gurley, Todd Gurley's the better player, but Mark Ingram is by far in the better situation. He is the lead back there on a high-powered offense, and they go through him as opposed to Gurley being the lead back on a very, pretty lackluster offense. We've already talked about trading Terrence West for Diggs straight up. I would not do that. I like the Diggs side. And Julian Edelman is also somebody that has vastly underperformed this season. He kind of makes me angry every time I think about him as well. He screwed me over in a few leagues. So Jordan Matthews has just been, I think he's been more productive than Julian Edelman has. I'm sure Julian Edelman will come back and have those games, but like Kev said, he's not entirely sure that he's 100% right. And I'm not seeing it from him. He's not that type of player that is really going to, sustain that type of offense week after week after week. I don't think that New England's just got too many weapons. So I'm keeping the Ingram, West, and Jordan Matthews side.
All right, Steven at GG Camp wants to know if he should trade Dez and Matt Forte for Melvin Gordon. A lot of Forte questions tonight.
A lot of Forte, and on this one, I am on the other side of the dice. I don't know. I guess there'd be 5 other sides of a dice. I'm on the other side of the coin than Sal on Dez Bryant. I think that when he comes back from this bye week, that he's gonna start coming back and really give you the return that you were expecting from him this year. Like I said, I thought that when Romo comes back that he is like going to get that job back. You guys both said that it's going to be Dak. So I think that if Romo does come back, that's also something that's going to help him. And I think there are better days ahead for Matt Forte. I agree that his snaps are getting cut into, but I think he's going to be facing some easier defenses going forward. And as long as Ryan Fitzpatrick can, somewhat try and right the ship, I think things are going to be going good for him. I think it's just a little too much for Melvin Gordon.
For the record, Kevin and I both chose Romo and you chose Dak.
Yeah, that's how that happened.
That's not how I remember that. Let's check the record.
Well, you are incorrect, sir.
You're definitely gonna have to check the tape on that because that's exactly how it went.
All right. Well, sometimes I think you guys hear what you want to hear.
Listen, I believe we both said.
We heard what we actually heard.
I believe we both. Sal said it, and I agreed with it. Whether I did on air or not, I don't remember. But he said that he felt like Dak should be the guy, but we both said Romo will get his job back, or at least get a chance to have his job back. So anyway, at my couch pulls out, but I don't. By
the way, when I saw that today, I had to actually explain it to a guy at work. I started dying laughing. He said, "What are you laughing at?" So I read it in the guy's screen name. He goes, "Well, what does that mean?" I'm like, "Are you serious?"
No, don't tell. Please don't explain it.
No, I won't explain it here because most of the people at home will definitely get it because we have degenerate listeners. But I love that name. I appreciate it.
It's a good one. Definitely a good name. I like how there's spaces in between each word too, so it's not it's easy to read. That's great. Brandon Marshall or Cameron Meredith, Sal? I get a sense I know where you're heading here.
No, it's still Brandon Marshall for me, if that's what you're wondering. Good. Brandon Marshall to me, and I've said this before, and I've had to defend him on the app. This guy's, in my opinion, a lock Hall of Fame wide receiver. Unfortunately, he's never played in a playoff game, but I don't know that it's ever been his fault. Maybe in his younger days, personality and attitude-wise. But this guy is he's everything you want in an NFL wide receiver. And he's matured so much in recent years. He's a different guy. And being in New York and having him in New York and hearing him on the radio here often and hearing the type of family guy that he is, I really have come to like Brandon Marshall. So I'll defend him as a person as well. But as a wide receiver and a fantasy wide receiver, there are very few guys that you just feel confident can go up against anybody in the league and be successful. And he is definitely one of those guys. Cameron Meredith is a great, great prospect, but he is not Brandon Marshall.
All right. Let's go with a couple of more here, guys. I'm kind of looking through the list, see some guys we may not have touched on here. How about this one? At Kaiser551 wants to know if he should trade Olsen and Curley for Reed and Matt Jones. Steve, the guy wants the Washington stack. I personally am not sure about that, but what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with all the questions that are going over with Jordan Reed and his concussion scares right now. I would not be trading away the number one tight end in fantasy for the time being. And Jeremy Curley, I do agree that you should probably try to get rid of him before his value is absolutely poop. But I don't think, it might be too late already, absolutely. But I wouldn't be trying to get rid of Olsen, and I wouldn't be trying to acquire someone who's had the type of injury history and is going through those injuries right now. Just a little bit scary. Wouldn't be trading Olsen for that.
All right, Sal. Alex Newman 0176 was offered Jeremy Hill and Brandon Marshall for C.J. Anderson. Is this even a question?
Hello, Newman. Yeah, this is not a question for me. For me personally, I stay with Brandon Marshall and Jeremy Hill, to be honest with
I
you.
think he was offered. And
Yeah, that's what it sounds
yeah,
like.
he was offered
Oh,
those two. And should he accept? I would accept as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I would absolutely accept that because, Jeremy Hill's not a droppable guy. For you people out there who are considering dropping him, he's still rosterable. You got to wait. It's 6 weeks into the season. There's more than half left, and this guy, he's proven to be a touchdown scorer. So I would wait on that. And then you got Brandon Marshall, who I've already explained recently my feelings on that. So I see that he still has Blunt, Hyde, Ware, and Fitz and Jones. I'm not excited about any of those guys at running back. So I would grab Jeremy Hill.
All right.
And Brandon Marshall.
At B Sully 25 wants to know if he proposed enough for the Julio, A-Rob or Doug Martin. Sal, what are your thoughts there?
First, B Sully, I'm awesome that you actually wrote the Julio. Did he write that?
No, he didn't.
B Sully, you're still awesome, my brother or sister. I really never know with these screen names. So he would give A-Rob and Doug Martin and get back Julio. I'm going to say no because I don't know what's going on with Doug Martin. I don't know what he's going to be, when he's going to get on the field. While I do like the idea of trading for Doug Martin, again, Julio is one of those guys, one of the elite, one of the people that could carry you for a week and win a week for you. So, no, that is not enough for me to give him up.
All right, and we'll finish up with this one. At 2 Drink Minimum, who is a good friend of the Falafel House, submitted about 1,600 questions in a single post. And then a couple of extra as we went along. But one of the good ones that I think is a good one to end on, he wants to know of what players at the top of their position are most likely to fall out. Let's go not necessarily in number 1 overall, but let's make it the top 5. So Steve, why don't you give me a couple? Sal, give me a couple, and I'll throw a couple out myself.
Oh, that's brutal. Top 6 running back. I was going to say Carlos Hyde. I don't think he is going to end the season there.
I will give it to you. That's fine. You can do
all
it.
right.
You're sad. You can do it.
Hey, I am sad. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will say Marvin Jones doesn't have a chance. I think he's going to fall out top 5 for wide receivers. And there's only so many positions left, so those are going to be the last ones. Sal, what do you got?
Yeah, for me, I'll say Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is the number 1 overall quarterback. I think he finishes as a top 10, maybe closer to 8 quarterback. And I know I said before that I would consider trading Aaron Rodgers for him, but I would said Ryan plus another piece for Aaron Rodgers. So don't come back to me on that, damn it. So Matt Ryan, I don't see finishing top 5. For running backs, I hope I don't steal this one from you, Kevin, but DeMarco Murray. He is a guy who's just absolutely had everything go right for him so far. Touchdowns up the wazoo every week. He's doing well, but we all know his penance for getting hurt. So I believe possibly because of an injury or just because Derrick Henry comes on a little bit to keep Murray healthy, that he does not finish top 5. And since we didn't do any tight ends, let me jump over and say right now, according to FF Today, I have Zach Miller as a number 4 tight end. Do you have that in front of you, anybody?
Yes, I do.
Number 4 overall.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would say there's no chance he finishes top 5 for the season.
Yeah, see, I was going to go tight end. I would have said Martellus Bennett. He's number 2, currently number 2. I think he probably will finish in the top 10, but I don't think he's going to be top 5. I think he definitely will regress, especially now that we see Gronkowski picking up the pace. There are going to be games where Bennett gets you the touchdowns like he did the other day, but there's no way he's gonna keep get 3 touchdowns a game very often. So he's one that I would consider. At running back for me, I think now we're kind of talking about the entire top 5, which is interesting. But Melvin Gordon for me is one that I don't know that we'll see in the top 5 by the end of the year. I think the touchdown regression for the touchdowns will come back a little bit as we go through the season. He is the guy. He will get a lot of attempts. So I do appreciate that. And I think he's an RB1, but I don't know that he'll be top 5 by the end of the year. And I guess that's probably good enough. So why don't we get to some finishing thoughts, Steve?
All right, I will just say one more time. If you could go and find our Twitter page at Falafel House, pinned to the top of that, or pinned to the top of my Twitter at Sid Skeet, or at Wally Central, or at Lido Sal, they'll get some pinned tweets up there as well. Find the tweet from Potter and Family and give us a vote for Show of the Week. We'd really appreciate it. And that's all I've got for my finishing thought this week. Look for us everywhere on social media. Just search for Falafel House.
For me, while I would like to have you guys all go vote for us and win, I would like to just say to the Tipsy Review, the New Era Pod, and at the Eagle Screech, you guys made it a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun, kind of battling out with you guys on Twitter this week, but all in good fun. Everybody seems to be enjoying it, and nothing is really being taken too personally. Thank you to everybody who contributed to the show tonight, and as always, to Charlie and Mark for helping us by promoting that shout for us today and helping the Falafel House podcast continue to be successful with the help of the Fantasy Life app.
All right, and for me, I just want to remind everyone that you can find us not only on social medias, but you can also find us on the web at falafelhouse.com. Go ahead out there and check it out. We definitely have a lot of good articles coming up daily. There's start-sit columns. There's waiver wire columns. There's all kinds of there's an angry old man recap by our friend Slime Sucking Hogs every week. So it's a good time going on that website, and we appreciate you checking it out. And finally, if you could review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, that would be great. We would definitely appreciate it. We love to see those, and the feedback is certainly helpful for us as we move along here. We will be back to you on Friday with a recap of the Thursday night game, or kind of a recap since we'll be recording during the middle of it. While we ruin the game for Sal, you can hear it. And that's about it. Until then, Steve, hit the button.